everyone, and welcome back to another weekly Newbnerds, where we talk about all sorts of things from tabletop games to toy reviews to video games and anything in between. Today, I'll be starting a new series on fantasy monsters, where we'll create a cool base and paint up a mini while talking about the monsters in the fantasy games. Most of the information descriptions will come from D&D first and second editions, which in my opinion is really the only ones worth playing. They're the ones that I grew up with and stay closest to Guy Gax's idea of what he wanted. We're going to start this series with the Simple Goblins. Goblins have been a staple of fantasy and fairy tale trope for many years, hundreds of years. Goblins that we know of today originated in European folklore. The first mention of goblins comes to us from about the 1100s from France, where they were known to cause all sorts of mischief. These creatures are not particularly large. In first edition and second edition, matter of fact, they're listed as small, around 4 foot, with low to average intelligence. Goblins live in a tribal society where the strongest rule. They have been in just about every major fantasy setting, including obviously Dungeons & Dragons, because we're talking about that. The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, World of Warcraft, Warhammer, and Warhammer 40k, as a matter of fact, Labyrinth, a lot of my favorite things there. Now that we know a little more about goblins, let's go ahead and take a look at the basing and painting process of these. Okay, so we're going to start by making the base. I wanted the goblin to be part of a war band that was going to be out and scouting around the forest, and came across some unfortunate travelers, so they attacked. We're going to start by painting on some PVA glue and covering it with fine dirt. Now, I'm not really sure this step was necessary, but it gives it a touch of realism. I mean, even if nobody else sees it, I'll know it's there, and you know it's there. Okay, after that's dried, I come back in and I paint some more PVA all over the place. It was recently my birthday, so I wound up buying myself a static grass applicator to really kick out some of the realism in the bases that I do. I've always liked watching the model railroaders use them, and they're really cool and do really neat, much more realistic than flying, I think. I start with, as I said, painting on some more PVA here. And then I will start with some 2mm grass, all the while kind of shocking myself too. Unfortunately, you probably can't see that in the video, but I shocked myself many times in this thing. I was holding the grass way too close, or the applicator way too close to that pin, the nail for it. Okay, after the 2mm dried, I come back in and I'm going to paint some more PVA in specific areas because I want it longer, and I'm going to come back in with some 4mm this time. Just to make it look a little more natural, a little more like it's wilderness. There's grasses, obviously, and the grasslands and forests and stuff like that. So come back in here, just some spots. You don't want to do the whole thing. I mean, you kind of want to, but I'm going to do just certain little spots in here and put on some 4mm at this point. And after the 4mm dries, I'm going to do roughly the same thing. I'm going to come into certain spots where I want a little bit thicker brush, or bushes and stuff like that. And I'm going to go in with 7mm static grass this time, just to give it more clumps. These are going to look like, you know, just what I said, clumps of grass. So. And here we have the finished product. You can see the clumps of grass, it's odd and even. There's not just one shocking size grass to it, so make it look a little more realistic and natural like that. Okay, after that, I went ahead and glued down a log. You know, it is wilderness, so there's bound to be logs. And I also made used some dry clay, and I made some mushrooms to stick on that fallen log too, to give it some more decayed look. I used the end of a pencil, took out the eraser, and used that as half circles. Okay, so then I added some moss in the way of flocking with some PVA glue. And then I painted the mushrooms a light tan. I then decided on the Goblin Wolf Rider from Reaper Minis. Thought this one was pretty cool for a warband leader. Okay, I attached the mushrooms with some regular PVA. You kind of see them there, a little half mushrooms. I think they're called oyster mushrooms or something like that. Not in a while, but I honestly do not remember.
US act of aggression was to derail the peace process. Timeless chemical weapons unleashed.
Okay, well that was drying. I started painting the wolf black. Just giving it a quick over, blocking all the areas, but I want it to be black. It's generally how I paint, is I'll block in areas and go back and refine it later. Okay, with the wolf drying, I went ahead and took some of this poly foam from an old pillow. I stretched it out pretty thin. Okay, and after it was thin enough, here, I go ahead and I'll attach it to just a little twig I had, or I found, with some spray glue. It's a nice, easy way to make good trees. And after that, I took it and put some more spray on there, more spray glue, and used Woodland Scenic's fine coarse turf, excuse me. You can see here that is. And then I just repeated the process to build up more and more layers to make it look more full and, more like a tree. And after that, I went ahead and stamped out some scale model leaves out of this with this leaf punch, and I'll glue those on later as leaf scatter. Okay, I painted the goblin in greens and tans. I then gave the wolf a dry brush with a gray, just to bring out the fur and some of the features. I then took my pin vise and drilled a hole the size of the twig base, just to make it easier to attach the base. It would have been kind of hard just to glue it and keep it in place like that, so I figured it'd be easier just to drill a little hole and super glue it in. When I was done the goblin, I went ahead and just sliced it off the base with a razor knife, taking care not to cut myself and to not cut off too much of the paw of the warg, or excuse me, the wolf. And with the goblin firmly attached to the base, it was time to add some more plants. I added some dried flowers and rocks, and various other little touches, like some little bit longer grass made out of cut bristles from a paintbrush. with that, it's done. I'm not really sure I like the fallen leaves, though. The color doesn't match the rest of it, so I might next time go back and try a little different technique. So I wound up learning a lot during the making of this video. It was my first time with a static grass applicator, and probably shows a bit. You know, if you're interested in trying one out, I highly encourage you to do so. It was a ton of fun, even with shocking myself. You do have to be careful with them, because you do shock the hell out of yourself. I hope you enjoyed this latest installment of Newbnerds. If you did, please remember to like, comment, and share this video. Next video, I'm probably going to do something a little bit different, deviate a bit from what I have been doing, and do a vintage toy review, which was another gift that I bought myself for my birthday last week. With that, I hope you all have a great day. Thanks so much for watching.